Hi, I'm Mr. Miyagi and this is Mr. Miyagi's Workshop. Well, today we're going to talk about auxiliary fuel tanks. I had a subscriber send me a little message going, he had a question about these, and was this actual reserve tank that I carry on the back of my bike? And yes, it is. So I want to get into the various types that I've used over the years and that may help you out, because you never know when you're out in the middle of nowhere. Let's say Nevada. I've ran out of fuel out there. I could see the gas station. It was about a half mile away, but I could see it. And luckily, I happened to have a gallon jug with me that I was able to put fuel in to make it the rest of the way there. A lot of times you don't know where you're going, especially traveling across country. You don't know where that next fuel stop is. So let's get into it and talk about various types and how to install them on your bike. Now, years ago, I was involved in a chopper race where you had to ride a rigid frame or a strutted bike, no windshield, no hard bags, no rubber mounted motor, no backup, and it was run across country. It's called the Stampede, and it was a fun race. We did it for 10 years, and then it just kind of tweedled out. But anyway, one of the reasons that we were able to make it across some of those areas is that we were running auxiliary fuel tanks. Now this one here is one of my first ones. This was like a 3.5 gallon one, and it went on a bike that had probably another 5 gallons. So my range was about 300 miles, which was, I wanted to get off at around 150 to 200, somewhere there and take a break. But they're great. These were mounted on a bracket area that you could mount onto the bike. Now I'm going to show some pictures of some of the bikes that I've had over the years that I've ran reserve tanks on, and you can get an idea of what's going on with that on some of the mounting. But this one was mounted on a rack behind my sissy bar, and it worked well. But you also got to consider the amount of weight that you're putting on here. At 3 gallons and 6 pounds a gallon, that's 18 pounds of weight hanging off there. So one of the major things I would do was I'd run this tank out first. Like any of them, I'd run out my reserve. And you go, why? Well, first off, you know how much fuel is in this exactly. And when you run out, you know how many miles it took to run that tank down. So you could figure in your head how many miles you've got left on your front tank if you know the gallons is in that. Plus, it moves your weight forward, which you never want a lot of weight on the rear, because you can get into high-speed wobbles because your weight's back there just on the rear. So that transfers that weight forward. But there's different styles. I mean, here I have this tank. Now this one was another one that I used. This is like a 2.5 gallon, and then believe it or not, this is a gallon tank right here, 1.5 gallons. And I ran this for a lot of years on several of my bikes. But let's say you don't have a really good way to mount these. There's always these little fuel cells, these MSR deals. Now this is a 30 ounce. And like a 20 ounce right here. Well, how do I mount that? Well, there's a lot of companies out there. Well, this is Rigid, that makes a nice little pack to throw it in, And it has strapping and everything, and it comes with some other straps I don't have here, but that you can strap that some way onto your bike. Well, you know, 30 ounces, that's, you know, a lot of times that's 10 miles. 10 miles might make a difference, you know? And another way you could pack it is that they also make these containers that will bolt or wire tie or whatever. They just unscrew, and I'll take you over here in a little bit and show you one that I've already set up. Drops in there, screws down, so you can mount them however you want, and makes for a darn good setup. Now, you can also get into making your own fuel tank. This is one I made several years back. I had it set so that it actually clamped onto my sissy bar. And I have a vent here that comes out so that it would actually drain. Okay, and then there's always the roll packs. These guys here, this is a 2-gallon one. I actually have a couple of 1-gallon ones that I have on one of my off-road vehicles. But even this, I've packed this on one of my choppers across country just to have the extra fuel. And with these guys, you can get the standard mount for it, which you got to find a spot for it. And these just tighten down. What they do is they slip in. And let me get this in the right position here. Get out here a little bit. These just tighten down on there and lock your container, your fuel container in place. Now here again, you got to think about your weight. This isn't too bad. I've had to use this in the past. Oh, they also make a locking style. So it doesn't, once this gets locked into place, you slide that in there, and there's no way that anybody can move that or turn it because it goes into place there. So it's kind of something to keep in. Now, remember, these are not cheap. These tanks, none of these tanks are cheap, but if you tend to do a lot of running across country, you know, it's nice to have that little bit of extra fuel. Now, I've also made up a couple of my own containers that this popped onto my frameworks, and then the cylinder dropped in. Now, this one was designed for a water jug, but that's the same process. It jumps in. I'll take you over and show you a couple over here that I've done. But, you know, carrying a little extra fuel doesn't hurt. You may not need it, but your buddy might. So let's go over and look at one of the ways that I have my other tanks set up. Now, this tank I have right here is roughly about a 3/4 to a gallon tank, and it's more than sufficient for this old bike here. This is my old shovel head. This is my 81. Now, with this tank up here, this is a stretch Sportster tank, and it holds about 3.5 to 3.8 gallons. What I ended up doing is I installed it on this bike because I tend to do a lot of trips with this bike. Now, the way I've got this set up is that I have a rubber line going to a hard line, down and then up to a shutoff valve so that I can reach from my seat. So I can run this tank when it's in the on position and turn it off when I run out of fuel and switch to my main tank. Now, I also have it set up with this nice flexible rubber hose that I got from Napa, the fuel line, that on occasions you may end up having to pull this off to fill your buddy's tank up. That happened to us on the way to Nevada City Roundup. A good friend of mine, he thought he had enough fuel. I thought we had enough fuel. I did, he ran out probably about a half mile to a mile away from a fueling area as we were getting close. And what we ended up having to do is take a water bottle, drain it, and then fill that up and then dump that into the tank. One of the other things you want to keep in mind is that that tank there needs to be slightly higher than your other tank or your carburetor. In one occasion, my wife and I were traveling to Texas and she kept running out of fuel, I thought, on her rear tank. Well, stupid me, I didn't run the line properly enough. I had it ran too high so that it wouldn't allow the fuel to go into the carburetor. Just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you've got a good flow to your carburetor. Now, I don't know how well this would work with fuel injection. You'd need to set up some system where you could refill the tank. Now, this is a Royal Enfield. It's one of the newer ones. It's fuel injected. And I tried to figure out a way to get the lines, but since everything is mounted into the tank, there's no way to actually do it unless you have like one of these bottles that you can mount. So this pack here, these side pack, they actually have room for me to slide a bottle down inside, or I could use one of these kits right here. But I tend to use this for extra water when I'm traveling because I go up into the hills with this bike. Okay, on my Himalayan here, I have these storage containers in here, the screw type ones that have the lids. And one of them I have a tire changing kit in, and the other one I've slipped in a bottle in here. And that gives me extra. Now, if I need to pack a little more, I do have these spots back here that I could either fasten my strap bag for holding them, or I can put them up front and eliminate one of my water bottles. On my 84 shovel here, I have a spot for another fuel container here that I made a little bracket for it. And then I also added one of those packs off of my sissy bar. But let me show you one other thing you can do. Now with a sissy bar, and you can put one of these roll packs on. Now this is a 2-gallon one, but I have ran the gallon and a half ones. I have several of these. I have one down here is for diesel, another one over there is for fuel. But the gallon ones would work sufficient because that gives you whatever mileage that you're getting out of your bike, that distance anyway. Hopefully it'll get you to a fueling station. Now, one other thing that I've done, this is an old Honda CB360. This is one I use up in the hills a bit. I have made up a fuel tank that actually straps to the side of my rack. I made a rack cover, and my extra, this is where I carry my tools, and this is where I carry my extra fuel, and my bedroll and everything, and my storage pack and everything. When I'm fishing and whatever, I can throw my gear back here and strap it on. Now, one other thing you want to keep in mind, you don't want to block your tail light out. So that's why I added this extra light up here. This is just you can still see this one from a distance, but when you're in traffic, it's nice to have another light up there that'll actually let the people know that you're stopping or you're there, especially at dark. I also have a sight gauge on my tank so that I can, once the rear tank runs out, I can keep an eye on where I am at to get. So this one here, well, this line here is when I get into this area, it's time to look for a fueling station. If I get down here, I'm in big trouble. One of the things I've done with this bike, and I've done it for years, is I'd carried an extra fuel right here, you know, one of these 30 ounces. And I just did a leather pouch, got some leather, tooled it, and put it on my leather bag. I mean, you can make one up. So these are the type of auxiliary fuel systems I've used over the years. Coyote Gear that built these tanks, I'm not sure he's still in business, although I've seen the tanks on Amazon and even on eBay. I've seen them. They're a good tank. This one here's probably got over 40,000 miles of rough roads and long distance running, and never had a problem with it. Rotopack, they make a smaller one. I mean, you can just strap these on anywhere. They make the 1 gallon size that works really well. Now, I've noticed on Amazon they have some cheap pop-offs of these, and they're cheap. They do leak. These Rotopacks, even though they're a little more expensive, they guarantee their product. And I use these on my off-road rigs, especially my Delica. I carry two 2-gallon tanks, so I have a top of 4 gallons to get me out of the woods if I tend to spend more time up in there. Like I've pointed out too, these bottles here, these MSR bottles, you can buy these from Lowbrow. They have their version, or Amazon. You can go on there, REI, whatever. They usually run about 19 bucks. Riggs Gear makes these packs. Yeah, the Lowbrow has their own version of this. And you never know, your buddy may need it more than you do. Plus these little containers here, I got this off of Amazon. There was some company on eBay that had them. They're cheap. I think I paid $8 for it. 8 or 9 bucks. I don't know. It wasn't all that much. I ended up getting a couple. You can see on my Himalayan that I put a couple on there. Or, you know, like I said, you can get down and make your own fuel tank. So if there's any questions or comments, you know, you can put them in the comment section below, or you can send them to my email address at tmiyagi@hotmail.com. And if you've liked this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget that ringy-dingy button for the next episode coming up. So this is Mr. Miyagi saying, you be safe out there and hope to see you on the road. Ciao.